I remember the first time I experienced doubt, and I was a Christian. I had just begun following Jesus. I was 18 months down the road, and I was reading a book. It was a religion book, and it was teaching me about all the religions of the world, the history of them, where they date back to, and all these things. And I remember just thinking to myself, what if, what if this isn't true? Like, what if this is all made up? What if, what if I've been duped here? What if I've been tricked into this thing? What if I'm following something that's just religiously captured me and my attention and my soul, and I messed up? Like, what if that happened? And that led me down a path of kind of just being skeptical for a season, and doubting my faith, and getting answers and answering questions and digging into people and going to look and read all kinds of books and read other religions and read other ideas, and question my own thoughts. And then um, and it led to a season of just of doubting, like just doubting what I believed to be true. And there were some people in that time of my life that were very harsh about that I was asking questions, that I was probing and challenging assumptions and wanting to get to the root of things. And they were not kind. Like they were not kind about that space in my life. Then there were others who were welcoming, who would sit with me in the questions, and who would answer some questions that they had, and they'd be honest about the answers that they didn't have. And they were just gracious people that welcomed me into their life and were willing to navigate that conversation. And it was those people who were merciful in that season of doubting that made the biggest difference in my life, and allowed me the space to explore and search and be curious on my own. And it changed me. It changed me. And so I think we've all had seasons in our lives where we've had doubts. Like, we've wrestled with questions. Maybe if we're Christians, we've wrestled with our Christian beliefs. And maybe if we're not Christians, we've wrestled with our own beliefs. Whatever those may be, we've had doubts. And that's okay. I think that's part of life. And so the encouragement we're going to find today in the book of Jude, as we continue our verse by verse daily devotional, as we're going to get into verse 22 here at the end. And just yesterday, he encouraged us to find mercy in the person of Jesus, that he is a person, Jesus is a person who we can find mercy in. That's a great thing to know. You can go to someone in whom you will find mercy. And today, he continues on with a very short verse. That's all we're going to talk about today. This very short verse where he encourages us to have mercy on those who doubt. Have mercy on those who doubt. We don't know why people are doubting. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know their backgrounds. We don't know their history. We don't know their trauma. We don't know their trials. We don't know their personality type. We don't know the kind of questions that they're really asking beneath the question. And so it takes time to get to know where someone actually is and what they're going through. For me, in my situation, I grew up with an awesome dad, affirming guy, competitive guy, athlete. He challenged me, he grew me, he encouraged me. But then when my parents got a divorce, my dad left and he was gone. I didn't see him for like 20 years. And I felt abandoned by the father figure. I felt I had lost a father figure. I felt I had lost a lot in my life. And because of that, there was always what I have found out later in my seasons of doubting God was I had doubted my dad. I doubted that my dad would love me. I doubted that my dad would care for me. I doubted my dad was there, right? I didn't have a relationship with him. And so a lot of my childhood experiences translated to my doubt of God. Well, if my dad didn't care, God doesn't care. If dad wasn't there, maybe God's not there. And I wrestled through a lot of those things to help me understand emotionally what I was going through, that led me to question the reality of who God is. The reality of, could I believe in an authority? Could I give my life to another authority, especially one who calls himself Father, because God calls himself a father? Could I give myself to that person? Could I trust him? How could I trust someone like that after what happened to me? And so I had emotional things in my life that were making it very hard for me to really trust God. Some of us may have intellectual doubts. Maybe you don't have an emotional barrier. Maybe it's just purely questions. You purely just like, okay, I could trust God, I could follow him, but I have questions about this scientific theory over here. How does this line up with what the Bible says? I just want to understand, is there a contradiction here, or can these two things coexist? And you just want to have intellectual questions. Did Jesus really rise from the dead? Is that a historical fact? Maybe I'm just an intellectual person and wanting to know the evidence for the resurrection. Can this be proven on historical grounds alone using archaeological, historical, and literary data? Can we come to that conclusion? That's an intellectual doubt. And we can have mercy on someone who's going through and needs that kind of information. Not all people need that information. Some people just believe. I think it's good to have the information. I think we should, but not all people need it. That's not how they're wired. It's not how they grew up. It's not what they need. And we should have mercy on people who are different than us. Maybe your doubt is not emotional. Maybe it's not intellectual. Maybe it's volitional. Volitional doubt is tough because volitional doubt means it's hard. We all know this. We don't want to submit or follow Jesus or follow God or believe in God because that would require us to change the way we live. Volitional means my will. Volitional means I'm running my life the way I want to run it. Things are going fine for me. Maybe, maybe not. But I don't want someone else to run the show. I have my will. Volitional doubt means I don't want to trust in God, believe in God, or even consider God because then I have to submit to God's will. And that is very hard. We all know what it's like to have self-will drive the show. And to give up our self-will in exchange for God's will is extremely hard to do. One second, buddy. So hard that we'll come up with a million reasons and excuses to justify not following him because we really just don't want to give up our own will. I want to do things my way. I don't want to do things God's way. And so we want to have mercy on that. We can all identify with being self-willed. And I can identify with the destruction that self-will causes and yet the desire to still walk in it. It's insane. But we can have mercy on people that doubt. We've all been there. We all have them if we're honest. And so 4 things we can take away from just this short passage as we look to God. What does this passage tell us about God? Well, God's merciful. He's a merciful God. He has mercy on those that doubt, and we should too. If you doubt what I'm saying right now, God has mercy on those who doubt. Just go to the book of John, Gospel of John, when Jesus resurrects, and he has mercy on Thomas who doubts the resurrection. And he has complete mercy. He doesn't shame him. He doesn't guilt him. Doesn't get angry at him. He's merciful. Go look that up. Let's continue. What does this tell us about man, humanity? We have doubts. We're doubtful people. This is normal. We're not always going to have everything figured out. We're not always going to be full of confidence in what we believe. Sometimes there's doubts. Sometimes we'll have doubts in ourselves. And some of you and some of us who are naturally doubtful, self-doubtful, we don't have a lot of self-confidence. If that's your situation and you're typically anxiety prone or self-doubt drone, self-critical, then it may be a lot easier. Those doubtful thoughts will translate to God. I'll doubt him because I'm doubting of myself. I'll criticize him because I'm critical of myself. So we're doubtful people. And those doubts can lead to doubts in God. And here's the good news. The gospel is always the good news. And today, let's be encouraged that though we lack faith, there is one who is faithful, Jesus Christ, completely faithful on our behalf, going to the point of death on a cross in our place, and by placing just a small seed of faith in him, in Christ, and what he has done, Doesn't have to be a giant amount of faith. Doesn't have to be a huge amount of faith. It doesn't matter, real quick, it doesn't matter how big your faith is. Maybe you have a little bit. Maybe it's just a seed of faith. What matters is where you put it. And if you put it in Jesus, he's the rock that can carry you. You don't have to have perfect faith. You just need to have a seed. He said a mustard seed, the smallest seed there was for his illustration. That's all it takes. It's not about the size of your faith. It's about the object of your faith, who you're putting it into. And if we put our faith in him, he can bring us completely back to God, into right relationship with God. That's the good news. Through Christ, we can become fully restored, fully reconciled back to God, even in the midst of our doubts. Even if you're struggling with doubt right now about some issues, Martin Luther, famous Protestant reformer of the 1500s, said, faith is but a wrestling with doubt. There may not be a time when you ever have all your doubts answered. And faith, your faith journey might be exploring and discovering one doubt at a time, to the point to where you're never going to have all your questions answered on this side of eternity. And you're always going to have something you may be wrestling with. And that is okay. Have mercy on those who doubt. And so our takeaway, our mission at Cold Creek Church is always very simple: to help people follow Christ. Today, I want to encourage you to help people follow Christ by showing mercy towards the skeptic, the doubter, the wavering, by listening to them, understanding their perspective, and praying for them. I've heard a wise man say, if someone's coming at a different perspective, maybe they're in a season of doubt, maybe they have a different view, it's good to understand their view as good as your own, if not better. To hear them, to understand them, to empathize with them. And if you can do that, then you'll show mercy in their season of doubting. Because God has mercy on us in our season of doubting. Be encouraged. Stay faithful, even if it's a small bit of faith. And hey, if you have questions about any of this, if you have doubts of your own and you want to talk about those, I'm available. We'll see you guys next time.